The jungle moon was eerily silent. Jonas Vance wiped sweat from his brow as he knelt beside his ship, tightening a loose bolt on the damaged thruster. His Starlancer was in bad shape after the pirate ambush. Another hit like that, and it would be space junk. With a sigh, he glanced at his scanner. The air was breathable, but the dense green canopy above made him uneasy. The last thing he needed was a wild creature sneaking up on him. Then he heard it, a rustling in the bushes. Jonas froze. His hand hovered over the plasma pistol on his belt. The sound grew closer, quick, unsteady footsteps. Then she appeared. A girl. An alien girl. She stumbled from the trees, her silver-white hair tangled, her skin a soft bronze. Golden eyes locked onto him with fierce intensity. She was breathtaking, except for the fact that she was bruised, barefoot, and completely naked. Jonas barely had time to react before she lunged, grabbing the wrench from his toolkit and swinging it at his head. He ducked. "Hey, whoa, easy. I'm not your enemy." She didn't understand his words, but she didn't lower the wrench either. Instead, she took a defensive stance, her breathing heavy. Jonas raised both hands in surrender. "Look, I don't know what happened to you, but I'm not here to fight." He slowly removed his jacket and held it out. "Here, you look like you could use this." Her golden eyes flickered to the jacket, then back to him. She hesitated, as if debating whether it was a trap. Jonas stayed still, waiting. Finally, she snatched the jacket and wrapped it around herself. "See, not a threat," Jonas said. "I'm Jonas. What's your name?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pointed past him toward the sky. Her face was urgent, almost desperate. Jonas followed her gaze and felt his stomach drop. A low, rumbling hum filled the air. Bright lights pierced through the jungle canopy. Ships. Coming fast. The girl's expression turned to fear. She grabbed his arm and pulled hard. Jonas barely had time to grab his gear before she dragged him into the trees. Moments later, the ground shook as a squad of armored bounty hunters landed where he had just been standing. He cursed under his breath. Who was this girl? And why did someone want her dead? One thing was clear. He had just gotten himself into something big. And it was far too late to turn back now. Jonas sprinted through the dense jungle, branches whipping against his face as the alien girl pulled him forward with surprising strength. His boots crunched over tangled roots, his breath ragged. Behind them, the bounty hunters shouted orders in a harsh, guttural language. Blaster fire cut through the trees, sizzling past Jonas's ear. He cursed. Yeah, definitely not friendly. The girl glanced back, golden eyes sharp with urgency. She didn't need words. Her grip tightened around his wrist, and she pulled him even faster. Jonas had no choice but to follow. They burst through a thick patch of undergrowth, sliding down a muddy slope into a shallow river. Jonas landed with a grunt, soaking his jacket and pants. The girl barely seemed to notice. She was already moving, her bare feet splashing through the water. Jonas scrambled after her. "Mind telling me what's going on?" Still, she said nothing. Frustrated, he pointed a thumb over his shoulder. "Those guys, friends of yours." She shot him a sharp glare. Definitely not friends. More blaster fire. Trees exploded into splinters as the bounty hunters fired from the ridge. One shot hit the riverbank near Jonas's foot, sending a spray of hot mud into the air. "Okay, less talking, more running," Jonas muttered. The girl suddenly veered left, dragging him into a rocky cave entrance hidden beneath a fallen tree. Jonas barely managed to duck inside before she pulled a lever embedded in the cave wall. A hidden metal door slid shut behind them with a hiss, sealing them in darkness. Jonas caught his breath. "You had a door. Why didn't we come here first?" The girl ignored him. Instead, she reached for a small panel on the wall and pressed a sequence of glowing symbols. Dim blue lights flickered on, revealing a tunnel leading deeper underground. Jonas took a good look at her now that they weren't running for their lives. She was young, maybe early 20s, though her sharp features gave her an air of someone who had seen too much. Her silver-white hair, now slightly damp, fell around her shoulders in tangled waves. Jonas's oversized jacket swallowed her frame, but she held her head high, her golden eyes still fierce. "So," Jonas wiped mud from his face, "you do have a name, right?" For the first time, she hesitated. Then, in a quiet but firm voice, she spoke. "Syrah." Jonas blinked. "Syrah. Huh. That's actually a nice name." He held out a hand. "Well, Syrah, I'm Jonas, and I'd really love to know why a bunch of heavily armed guys are trying to kill you." She stared at his hand, but didn't take it. Instead, she pointed at him and narrowed her eyes. "Who, you?" Her accent was thick, her voice slightly raspy, but she was clearly trying. Jonas sighed. "I told you, I'm Jonas. Just a guy with a broken ship who didn't plan on being shot at today." Syrah studied him for a long moment, as if deciding whether to trust him. Finally, she turned and motioned for him to follow her deeper into the tunnel. Jonas groaned but followed. "Yeah, sure. Why not? It's not like I had any plans or anything." As they moved further underground, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just stepped into something way bigger than himself. And judging by the look in Syrah's eyes, this was only the beginning. Jonas followed Syrah deeper into the cave, his boots echoing against the smooth stone floor. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of metal and damp earth. Dim blue lights flickered along the tunnel walls, casting eerie shadows as they walked. Syrah moved quickly, her bare feet silent against the ground. Jonas still couldn't believe how calm she seemed, even after nearly getting killed. "So," he said, breaking the silence, "are we just gonna keep walking forever, or are you actually gonna tell me what's going on?" Syrah didn't answer. She reached a heavy metal door and pressed a sequence of glowing symbols on the wall. With a low hiss, the door slid open, revealing the hidden chamber. Jonas stepped inside and let out a low whistle. The room was small but packed with technology. Holographic maps hovered above a sleek metal table, alien symbols flashed across glowing screens, and stacks of supplies were neatly arranged against the walls. "This yours?" Jonas asked, raising an eyebrow. Syrah nodded and walked to a console. Tapping on the screen, a blue hologram flickered to life, displaying a massive warship, sleek, dark, and armed to the teeth. Jonas frowned. "That's not a friendly-looking ship." Syrah turned to him, her golden eyes serious. Follow me." She tapped the screen again, and the image zoomed in, revealing rows of metal crates stacked inside the ship. One of them opened, showing a strange-looking device glowing with blue energy. Jonas crossed his arms. "All right, what am I looking at?" Syrah hesitated, searching for the right words. "Warship. My people. Not wanted." Jonas tilted his head. "You stole from them." She shook her head quickly. "No. I stopped them." She pointed to the crates again. "Weapons. Big. Kill many." Jonas's eyes widened. "You mean mass destruction weapons?" Syrah nodded gravely. "They take. Sell. To bad ones." She balled her hands into fists. "I stop." Jonas exhaled. "Let me guess. Those bounty hunters work for them." Syrah's expression darkened. "Yes." Jonas rubbed his temples. "Great. So I didn't just save some lost girl. I saved a wanted fugitive with an entire army hunting her down." He looked at her. "You're lucky I have terrible decision-making skills." Syrah tilted her head. "Terrible." Jonas chuckled. "Never mind." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the cave. The screens flickered, and the walls trembled slightly. Jonas's stomach dropped. That wasn't thunder, was it? Syrah rushed to the console and tapped rapidly. A holographic security feed popped up, showing the cave entrance. Jonas's eyes widened. The bounty hunters had found them. A squad of armored figures stood outside, their weapons raised. One of them, a massive alien with dark red skin, lifted a device and pressed a button. A countdown timer appeared on the screen. They were setting explosives. Jonas grabbed Syrah's arm. "We need to move. Now." Syrah didn't argue. She grabbed a small bag and slung it over her shoulder before leading him toward another passage. The ground rumbled again, the sound of cracking stone filling the air. Jonas swore under his breath. He had no idea how he got himself into this mess. But one thing was clear: if they didn't escape fast, they weren't getting out at all. Jonas sprinted after Syrah as the tunnel shook around them. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the sound of collapsing stone echoed behind them. The bounty hunters weren't wasting time. They were blowing the cave apart. "Faster," Jonas shouted. "I don't feel like getting buried today." Syrah didn't slow down. She moved with the grace of a trained warrior, dodging falling debris without hesitation. Jonas, on the other hand, was just trying not to trip over his own feet. A loud boom rocked the tunnel, nearly knocking him off balance. He turned his head and saw a fiery explosion rip through the chamber they had just left. The bounty hunters were coming. Syrah grabbed his wrist and pulled him forward. "Here." They reached a metal door built into the rock. Syrah quickly pressed a sequence of glowing symbols on a panel beside it. Nothing happened. Her golden eyes widened in frustration. She tried again, tapping the panel harder. Jonas looked over his shoulder. Shadows flickered on the tunnel walls. The bounty hunters were close. Any day now would be great," he said. Syrah gritted her teeth. "Door stuck." Jonas groaned. "Of course it is." He glanced at the control panel and took a deep breath. "Move." She stepped aside, and Jonas yanked a tool from his belt. He pried open the panel's cover, revealing a mess of glowing wires. "All right, let's see." He muttered to himself as he pulled out 2 wires and twisted them together. A small spark flew, and for a second, nothing happened. Then, with a loud hiss, the door slid open. Jonas grinned. "Still got it." Syrah's eyes lit up with surprise, but there was no time for words. She grabbed his arm and pulled him through the doorway. They ran into a large cavern filled with old machinery. A single ship sat in the middle, a small, sleek spacecraft covered in dust. Syrah pointed to it. "Go." Jonas didn't argue. They sprinted toward the ship as blaster fire erupted behind them. Bright red energy bolts struck the ground, kicking up sparks. Jonas ducked behind a stack of crates. "They're shooting at us now." Syrah pulled out a small curved blade and crouched beside him. "Always." Jonas exhaled sharply. "I hate your life." A voice boomed from the tunnel. "Syrah, you cannot run forever." Jonas peeked around the crates. A tall, red-skinned alien stood at the entrance, holding a massive rifle. His black armor gleamed under the cavern lights, and his sharp fangs curled into a grin. "Friend of yours?" Jonas asked. Syrah's grip tightened on her blade. "No." Jonas sighed. "Didn't think so." The bounty hunter raised his rifle. "Surrender now, and maybe we'll let your companion live." Jonas groaned. "Why is it always me?" Syrah suddenly sprang into action. She leaped over the crates, moving faster than Jonas thought possible. Before the bounty hunter could react, she landed a powerful kick to his chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Jonas didn't wait to see what happened next. He sprinted toward the ship. He slapped the control panel, and the ramp hissed open. "Syrah, move it," he yelled. Syrah knocked the bounty hunter's weapon aside and dashed toward the ship. More hunters stormed into the cavern, firing as they ran. Jonas jumped into the pilot's seat, flipping switches. The ship rumbled to life. Come on, come on." Syrah leaped onto the ramp just as Jonas pulled a lever. The ship's engines roared, lifting them off the ground. Blaster shots bounced off the hull as they shot toward the exit tunnel. Jonas gripped the controls, weaving through the narrow passage. A final explosion rocked the cavern behind them. The shockwave sent the ship spinning. Jonas clenched his jaw and steadied the controls. They burst out of the cave, soaring into the open sky. Sirrah collapsed into the seat beside him, breathing hard. Jonas let out a shaky laugh. "Well," he said, "that was fun." Sirrah gave him a tired look. "You are strange." Jonas grinned. "You have no idea." Jonas gripped the ship's controls, his heart still racing from their escape. The desert landscape stretched below them, fading into the horizon as they climbed higher into the planet's dusty atmosphere. The engines hummed, steady but strained. Sirrah sat beside him, breathing heavily. Her golden eyes flickered toward him. "You fly well, for a human." Jonas smirked. "Thanks. I try not to crash, most days." She didn't laugh. Instead, she studied the screens in front of her. "We're not safe yet." Jonas frowned and checked the radar. A red blip appeared behind them. Then another. Then 3 more. "Ah, come on," he groaned. "They sent ships after us." Sirrah leaned forward. "Hunter-class interceptors. Fast, heavily armed." Jonas sighed. "Of course they are." A voice crackled through the ship's comm system. "Unidentified vessel. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Jonas rolled his eyes. "Yeah, that's not happening." The radar beeped urgently. The ships were closing in fast. Jonas tightened his grip on the controls. "All right, hold on to something." Sirrah barely had time to react before Jonas threw the ship into a sharp dive. The engines roared as they sped toward the ground, weaving through thick clouds. Blaster fire streaked past them, bright red streaks cutting through the sky. Sirrah's fingers dug into the armrests. "You are insane." Jonas grinned. "I get that a lot." A blast rocked the ship. Warning lights flashed red. "Shields down to 40%. Sirrah read off the console. Jonas cursed under his breath. "All right, plan B." Sirrah arched an eyebrow. There was a plan A. He ignored her and punched a few buttons. The ship's thrusters shifted, and suddenly they jerked into a sharp turn, skimming just above the desert surface. Dust kicked up in their wake. The bounty hunters followed, their ships closing in. Jonas spotted a narrow canyon ahead. He grinned. "Let's see how good they are at flying." The ship darted into the canyon, weaving between towering rock formations. The bounty hunters followed, firing wildly. Blasts exploded against the canyon walls, sending debris raining down. Sirrah's eyes widened. "If you miscalculate, we will die." Jonas smirked. "Good thing I don't miscalculate." The canyon walls grew narrower, forcing them into a tight path. The bounty hunters weren't as lucky. One of the ships clipped the rocks and spun out of control, crashing into the canyon floor. Jonas whooped. 1 down. Sirrah was less amused. 3 remain. Jonas checked the scanners. The remaining ships were still closing in. Then he spotted something, an old wreck buried in the canyon floor. It looked like a derelict cargo hauler, half covered in sand. Jonas grinned. "I've got an idea." He flicked a switch, cutting the ship's engines for a split second. They dropped suddenly, skimming the surface just feet above the wreck. At the last moment, Jonas reignited the thrusters, shooting them upward. The bounty hunters weren't so lucky. One of them panicked and tried to follow, but he was too slow. His ship slammed into the wreckage, exploding in a fiery blast. Sirrah's eyes widened in surprise. That was unexpected. Jonas winked. "I call it improvising." The 2 remaining ships broke off, realizing the chase wasn't worth it. Jonas watched as their blips vanished from the radar. He let out a deep breath. "We're clear." Sirrah sat back, studying him with a strange expression. "You are reckless." Jonas smirked. "But effective." Sirrah said nothing for a long moment. Then, to his surprise, she gave a small nod. "Yes, effective." Jonas stretched his arms. "Well, now that we're not about to die, how about we figure out where we're going?" Sirrah's expression darkened. We need to leave this system. If the bounty hunters tracked me here, others will follow. Jonas frowned. Right. So where to? She hesitated, then finally said, There is a place, a hidden colony. My people, those who refused the war, may still be there. Jonas raised an eyebrow. A secret alien colony. Sounds fun. Syrah's voice was quiet. It is my only chance. Jonas nodded, adjusting the ship's heading. All right, warrior princess. Let's go find your people. Jonas leaned back in the pilot's seat, watching the streaks of light warp past the window as they traveled through hyperspace. It had been a rough escape, but they had made it. Now, he just had to hope that Syrah's plan wasn't leading them straight into another disaster. He glanced at her. She sat stiffly in the co-pilot's chair, her golden eyes locked on the navigation screen. Her dark, silken hair fell over her shoulders, but she didn't seem to notice. She was focused, too focused. You okay over there? Jonas asked. Syrah didn't answer at first. Then, in a quiet voice, she said, If my people are still there, they will not trust you. Jonas raised an eyebrow. Yeah, I kind of figured. Not a great track record with alien warriors so far. She finally turned to him, her gaze serious. You must let me speak first. If they see you as a threat, they will strike. Jonas sighed. Great. Love being welcomed with open arms. The ship's control panel beeped. They were coming out of hyperspace. Jonas tightened his grip on the controls as the star-speckled blackness of space gave way to a breathtaking view. A massive, swirling gas giant with a deep red hue. And just beyond it, nestled in the orbit of one of its moons, was their destination. It wasn't what Jonas had expected. Instead of a city or a planet-side settlement, the colony was hidden within a colossal wreck. An ancient warship, its surface scarred and broken. It floated in the darkness like a forgotten relic. That's the colony? Jonas asked, eyebrows raised. Syrah nodded. The Valkyrie's Wrath. It was once a great warship. Now, it is home. Jonas whistled. Well, at least you picked a place no one would think to look. As they approached, a transmission crackled through the comm system. A deep, commanding voice spoke in a language Jonas didn't understand. Syrah responded quickly, her tone sharp but respectful. There was a long pause. Then, without warning, the ship jolted. A tractor beam had locked onto them. Jonas clenched his jaw. Is this the part where they shoot us down? Syrah gave him a look. Remain silent. The beam pulled them into a docking bay, where a group of heavily armed warriors waited. They wore sleek battle armor, their helmets obscuring their faces. The second the ship touched down, they raised their weapons. Jonas lifted his hands. Okay. Let's all take a deep breath. One of the warriors, taller than the rest, stepped forward and removed his helmet. He had sharp features, deep crimson markings across his cheekbones, and piercing amber eyes. Syrah, he said, his voice heavy with disbelief. Syrah stepped forward, her posture rigid. Tavik. Jonas frowned. Oh great, you two know each other. That's not awkward at all. Tavik's gaze snapped to Jonas, and his expression darkened. Who is this human? Syrah hesitated. He aided me. Tavik's eyes narrowed. A human helped you. He looked Jonas up and down with clear disapproval. You must be desperate. Jonas grinned. Nice to meet you too, buddy. Tavik ignored him, turning back to Syrah. Come, the elders must see you. Syrah glanced at Jonas before nodding. Let him come as well. Tavik's jaw tightened. That is unwise. Jonas rolled his eyes. Oh, come on. I didn't fly through bounty hunters and nearly crash just to wait in the lobby. Tavik's glare could have burned through steel, but after a tense moment, he finally turned away. Fine, but if he says one wrong word, I will gut him myself. Jonas clapped his hands together. Well, this is off to a great start. As they followed Tavik deeper into the warship, Jonas couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking straight into another impossible situation. Jonas followed Sirah and Tavik through the dim corridors of the ancient warship. The walls were lined with flickering control panels, their once powerful displays now reduced to a faint glow. The air smelled of metal and old energy, a place that had survived far beyond its time. Sirah walked ahead, her shoulders tense. She wasn't just returning home. She was walking into judgment. Jonas could see it in her posture, in the way she kept glancing at Tavik, as if expecting him to say something. Jonas, on the other hand, was too busy trying not to get stabbed by the warriors escorting him. Their hands never strayed far from their weapons, and every step he took earned him a suspicious glance. "Do all your friends glare like this, or is it just my lucky day?" Jonas muttered to Sirah. Tavik shot him a look. "You are not among friends, human." Jonas sighed. "Yeah, I got that." Finally, they'd reached a large chamber. The ceiling arched high, supported by massive beams that bore the markings of the Valkyrie people. At the far end of the room, a group of elders sat on an elevated platform. Their faces were lined with age, but their golden eyes still burned with strength. The middle elder, a woman with silver hair braided in intricate loops, leaned forward. "Sirah, you return." Sirah bowed her head. "I do. And yet you bring a human." The elder's gaze shifted to Jonas. "Explain." Sirah inhaled sharply. "He saved me." A murmur ran through the room. Tavik crossed his arms. "She was captured by slavers. When I received word, I feared the worst." His eyes flicked toward Jonas. "Instead, I find her with him." Jonas held up a hand. "For the record, I'm as confused as you are about how I got into this mess." The elders did not smile. The silver-haired one spoke again. "Sirah, you know our laws. A Valkyrie warrior does not accept aid from an outsider, much less a human." Jonas frowned. "Wow, harsh." Sirah clenched her fists. "He did not aid me. He fought beside me." The second elder, a man with deep scars along his jaw, narrowed his eyes. "Is that true, human?" Jonas shrugged. "Look, I didn't exactly sign up to be a hero, but when I saw Sirah in trouble, I didn't run. We fought, together." The elders exchanged glances. Then the silver-haired one asked, "And why would you risk yourself for her?" Jonas hesitated. It wasn't something he had thought about deeply. He could have left Sirah behind. He could have ignored her when they first met, but he hadn't. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe because she deserved better than what those slavers were doing. Maybe because I know what it's like to have nowhere to go." A long silence followed. Then the scared elder spoke. "You expect us to believe you acted without selfish intent." Jonas met his gaze. "I don't expect you to believe anything. But I didn't leave her behind, and I won't now." Sirah's breath caught. The murmurs in the chamber grew louder. Tavik scowled. "This is a waste of time. He has no place among us." The silver-haired elder raised a hand. The room fell silent. Then she said, "If this human truly fought as a warrior, then let him prove it." Jonas blinked. "Wait. Prove it how?" A door at the side of the chamber slid open. Beyond it, a large arena stretched into darkness. Tavik smirked. "By surviving." Jonas let out a slow breath. "Yeah, of course. Should have seen that coming." Sirah stepped forward. "This is unnecessary." "He has already." The elder cut her off. "It is the way of our people." Jonas rubbed his forehead. "So, what exactly am I fighting?" Tavik grinned. "A beast." Jonas groaned. "Awesome. Love that." As the guards began leading him to the arena, Sirah caught his arm. "Jonas." He turned to her. She looked conflicted, as if trying to find the right words. Then finally she said, "Do not die." Jonas grinned. "Hey, if I make it through this, you owe me a drink." He turned back and stepped into the arena, the heavy doors sealing behind him. The arena was massive, its stone walls rising high like an ancient colosseum. Dim red lights flickered from the ceiling, casting eerie shadows across the sand-covered floor. Jonas stood in the center, rolling his shoulders as he tried to ignore the unsettling growls echoing from the darkness beyond the metal gates. "This is fine," he muttered to himself. "Totally fine. Just me, a human, against an alien death beast. No big deal." From the elevated viewing platform, the Valkyrie elders watched in silence. Sirah stood among them, her hands clenched into fists. Tavik smirked beside her. "This should be over quickly," Tavik said. Sirah shot him a glare. "You underestimate him." A loud metallic clank filled the air as the far gate began to rise. A gust of hot air rushed into the arena, carrying the scent of something primal and wild. Then it stepped forward. The creature was massive, at least 12 feet tall, covered in thick, armored hide. Its 4 glowing eyes locked onto Jonas, and it let out a guttural roar that shook the ground beneath his feet. Jonas exhaled sharply. "Oh yeah, that's fair." The beast charged. Jonas barely dodged as a massive clawed hand slammed down where he had stood. The force sent sand flying into the air. He rolled to the side, scrambling for a weapon. Anything he could use. His eyes darted across the arena. There, half buried in the sand, a fallen spear from a previous match. He sprinted toward it, but the beast was faster. It lunged again, swiping with its claws. Jonas ducked at the last second, feeling the rush of air as the strike missed him by inches. He hit the ground, grabbed the spear, and spun to face the monster. "All right, ugly. Let's dance." The beast roared and charged again. Jonas didn't run this time. He waited, watching, calculating. At the last moment, he sidestepped, jamming the spear upward. The tip struck just beneath the beast's jaw, its only exposed weak spot. The creature howled in pain, thrashing wildly. Jonas barely managed to pull the spear free before it could swipe at him again. Above, the Valkyrie warriors murmured. "He wounded it," one said in surprise. Tavik's smirk faltered. "Lucky strike." Sirah leaned forward, her heart pounding. Jonas didn't stop. He circled the beast, keeping just out of reach. The creature, now furious, lunged again. This time, Jonas used its own momentum against it. He dodged left, swinging the spear with all his strength, right into the creature's knee. The beast collapsed with a deafening crash. Jonas wasted no time. He ran up its back, gripping the spear tight, and drove it deep into the back of its skull. The arena fell silent. The beast let out one final shudder, then slumped forward, unmoving. Jonas stood there, panting. His arms ached, his lungs burned, but he was alive. Then the silence was broken. A single voice called out from the stands. "Warrior." Then another, and another. Within moments, the entire crowd was chanting, "Warrior, warrior, warrior." Jonas glanced up at Sirah, who stared at him with wide, astonished eyes. Then he looked at Tavik, whose expression had turned sour. Jonas grinned, wiping sweat from his brow. The elders stood. The silver-haired leader raised her hand for silence. "This human has fought with honor," she declared. "He has proven his strength." She turned to Sirah. "You have chosen well." Jonas blinked. "Wait, what now?" Sirah exhaled sharply, then walked toward him. Her golden eyes met his. "You're one of us now," she said, voice soft but firm. Jonas chuckled. "Guess that means I get my drink, right?" Sirah smirked. "You get more than that." And as the warriors cheered, Jonas couldn't help but smile. Maybe, just maybe, he had found where he truly belonged.